In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petition, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, I will begin by sharing my screen and putting this into a slide. Okay. I assume you can all see just fine. You might need to move things around on your screen. You know how it goes in Zoom. We're all Zoom pros at this point. Okay, so welcome to the first in our three-part series. Speaking for myself, and I think I can speak for the other two members of this team who helped develop this whole idea, Dr. Timothy Smith, who is here with us, and Dr. Matthew Ramaj, who you will hear from next time. The three of us are going to be talking about what we're trying to do here, and so I'm really pleased and honored to open up this series today, and I really appreciate you being here. I hope you can come to all three. If you cannot, we are recording them, and they will be posted on the website so that you can watch these later. What we're trying to do here is big. That's how I see it. It is something big. And there's a comment a student made to me several years ago that has always stuck with me. I teach science and math classes. I teach chemistry and physics. My background is chemistry. I love chemistry. And I teach it at liberal arts colleges like Holy Apostles College and Seminary, and I taught at Colby Academy for a while, which is an online homeschool academy. So I teach science to a lot of students who are liberal arts students, and they're terrified of science. They don't want to take science courses. And I love that challenge because if I can get a student excited about science who already doesn't think that he or she can do science or be good at science or will like science, that's exciting to me because the way I see science, it's the study of God's handiwork. And so when someone who's not going to become a scientist necessarily, but who doesn't think much about science or isn't too interested in science, when their eyes are opened to what we have discovered with modern science about the natural world, it's very exciting to me. I feel like that changes the person's life in some way that stays with you for the rest of your life. It changes how you see the world, how you see the world that God created. So that's my passion behind this. But to do this kind of project it's interdisciplinary. So what the student said to me that stuck with me was, Dr. Trasancos, I really like your science course, because chemistry, I think, because it's legit. And that is young people language for, well, I had to ask, what does that mean? It's legit. What do you mean the class is legit? And the student told me, she was a female. She said, it all hangs together. You show us how it all fits together. And I see how science fits into the other things I'm learning in the humanities. And that's the goal of education. That's one of the goals of education, is to bring these different disciplines into a unity. So that her statement has always stayed with me, and it's kind of the quest for why I think there needs to be interdisciplinary work. We've got disciplines now. We've got modern science in a way that was never before. You have more stacked into a physics and a chemistry textbook now than ever before in history. So teachers literally struggle to teach a fundamental class and cram everything into it that needs to be there. And what gets lost in that kind of education is the connection to the bigger picture. You end up memorizing equations and formulas and stuff that people hate because they don't understand it. So we're at this moment in history where we have a lot of knowledge and it's become categorized and separated, and it's a good time to bring it back together. And we're very privileged as Catholics to be able to do that because that is how we look at the universe. So our project here is called Our Common Home: Science, Nature, and Creation. And I want to tell you a little bit about how the grant, a little bit about the grant, the background. That's part of being legit, I think, is understanding the story and the background behind something. I have a little bit of the language over here for you to look at from the AAAS. So what is the AAAS? It is the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences. It is strictly a secular science organization, but what's amazing is they have a branch called Dozier, and it's the Dialogue on Science, Ethics, and Religion. And they offer grants several times a year. They offer, if you're interested, if this piques your interest, contact me. I can show you how to follow these and look for grant opportunities in the future. They offer grants several times a year to theological institutions. It is interreligious, so any religion. A lot of them are Christian, but all the denominations are there. There were only a couple of Catholic institutions even in the cohort where our grant was positioned. But we applied for this grant and we were awarded $10,000 to develop this lecture series, a couple of new courses, and to be able to do the interdisciplinary part correctly, meaning that Dr. Smith, Dr. Ramaj, and myself came together in person for 2 days to work out what the new course would look like, called Our Physical World. I'll talk more about that in a minute. You might see Dr. Smith in this picture. If you look closely, you can see him over here on the left side of the screen. He actually went to one of the beginning seminars that they had so all the colleges could meet each other and learn more about what they were trying to do. And you can see the list of all the other colleges here. So that's what brought this about. Our particular proposal, and I'm just trying to position this. I'm not going to go into a lot of depth here. You can read it if you're inclined. Our particular proposal had 4 parts. It had the interdisciplinary workshop so we could come together, and actually the 3 of us had to talk about what does it even mean to do something interdisciplinary between science, nature, and creation. It required a discussion even what that is. Then another part was the fall lecture series, which is beginning now, and another part is a graduate theology course called
get a reservation.
And then another part is the biggest piece is this undergraduate course.
You should be able to go on the website and find it.
Might need to mute. Let's see.
I gotta read.
You should be able to mute anybody.
Yeah, I'm looking for where to do that.
Just click on her link, Kathy Ann Clark.
Oh, okay.
If you can find the picture.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it. Okay, there. And I found it. Thank you. So our course is Our Physical World, and this means just that, our physical world. So we're looking at the physical world. And it's going to be a required course for all first-year undergraduate students, part of the core curriculum. And we told the grantor that we envisioned this, and we've achieved that. It's going to be a real synthesis of interdisciplinary fundamentals of physical science, natural philosophy, and the theology of creation. Dr. Smith is a philosopher, I'm a scientist, and Dr. Ramaj is a theologian. So we have those 3 expertise there. But here's the thing. Climate science has sort of different meanings to different people. It's a controversial topic. We're not teaching climate science in a political context at all. We're following up on what Pope Francis encouraged us to do, and it is big when you think about it. Not only is it going to be interdisciplinary, bringing in Aristotelian Thomistic natural philosophy and the theology of creation, which is richly developed by the last four popes, and more than that in our tradition as Catholics. It's also going to bring in some science. But to do the interdisciplinary part, we have to think big. What is the purpose of a course like this? And it is summed up in one word called stewardship. Think about that word. Stewardship, climate science could be said to be one of the big controversies of our day. There's a lot of different opinions. It's kind of like the evolution controversy, where the church has said these are the doctrines, the dogmas that are binding on you as a Catholic. You can't deny the existence of God. You can't deny that God created everything. You can't deny the existence of the human soul and that we're body and soul. But the question about the evolution of the body, that is left for scientific interpretation. And having studied that issue a lot, I can tell you the science is far from settled there. We are human. We know very little about this big world, and there's a lot that we don't know. Climate science and stewardship is even bigger than that, because it encompasses living things on Earth, but it also encompasses the rest of the universe and our place in the world and our role as stewards, which also brings into bear the formation of the whole person. Who are we anyway, standing on this planet, looking around at this world? We are body and rational soul. We have obligations to practice virtue. We have obligations as stewards to take care of this planet and to take care of our fellow human being. What does that all mean? So these are the kind of big questions that we're presenting to students to start them thinking. It gets at also epistemologically, what is the purpose of education? What do we want students to do? We have people here today some of us are professors, some of us are alumni, and I am one of them. We have people who are past students. We have students here, and we have administrators here. We're a community, and we might even have some people just from the community here because this was open to the public. We're a community, and I think this is also a good time for all of us to think about what we're doing with, education. If you're a student, Holy Apostles is your school. This is the school where you're going to graduate, and that degree is going to go with you for the rest of your life. You're going to be tied to this institution for the rest of your life. As professors, we're part of your becoming. We're part of what happens to you and what you learn. And we have obligations to you to teach you things that you can use in your life that help form you, not only as a person and in your vocation, but also as a citizen, as a steward, as an evangelist, as a disciple. So I know, speaking for my fellow professors here, we take that obligation very seriously, and the administration does as well. But students are not just here passively receiving something. You're part of this. And so I'm saying all this because when I get to the end, I do want to know your thoughts. I'm presenting the big ideas, but that's for the purpose of stimulating your own thought. How do we do interdisciplinary education? What does that mean? What does that look like? What is the purpose of being a steward? What does that mean? So that's kind of, when you do a grant, you do have to think about the purpose of everything. You're not just developing a course. You're not just doing a lecture series. Here's a little bit of review. I'm going to get more into the science, but I'm not doing it to the exclusion of everything else. What is the church's magisterial teaching on the care for creation? It comes from Pope Francis's Laudato Si, where he had other writings, but that's the main one. And we are told there to view the earth as God's gift, to view all of nature as God's gift to us, entrusted to us with stewardship, which implies obligation. Taken from Genesis 2:15, the Lord God then took the man and settled him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and care for it, to care for creation. Our dominion then is protective. We don't exploit what's on the earth. We recognize creation's intrinsic value and interconnectedness. So that's a big word too. I'll say more about that scientifically in a minute. And this phrase integral ecology has come into use. It implies a unity itself of environmental protection, social justice. Pope Francis links the cry of the earth to the cry of the poor. There are social justice issues with exploiting the earth in some parts of the world that affect the lives of the poor or make people poor. And sometimes we don't think beyond our own locale. And the encyclical is a call to think more globally, to critique consumerism and technocracy. And to think beyond our own generation, to think about our choices and how that affects what kind of world are we going to leave to the next generation. He calls for ecological conversion, repentance, sustainable lifestyles, dialogues across faiths and sciences, which is what we're doing here, solidarity, renewable energy, biodiversity. There's a lot going on in the scientific fields to those ends. I like to say, when people ask me what I think about climate change, I say we're living the experiment. We are living it now. I don't think anybody knows for sure all of the effects that humans have on the environment, but God intended it that way too. We are created there. It's all created for us. We're supposed to be living here. We're supposed to be influencing things and changing things. If a couple gets married and has a baby, they change the course of a great many atoms for all times in ways the atoms wouldn't have moved left to their own devices. So we are interacting with creation, and we're supposed to. Can that go bad? Yes. Can innovation come in and fix that? Yes. And I think we're seeing a lot of that interplay going on right now. And all I'll say about climate science is we're allowed to have different opinions. So I may have an opinion that doesn't agree with other people in a scientific sense, but as long as we're all trying to answer the big questions, then I think we are aligned in the right direction. So there's a moral imperative here rooted in love of neighbor and love for God. Okay, back to the interdisciplinary part. I said already, I got a little ahead of myself and I said some things about that already, but interdisciplinary is an important concept in education, especially higher education right now across the board. You know, what are other big themes? Artificial intelligence and how we use that in education, online education. How do we use the good part about reaching more students where they might not be able to go to school? Back in 2010, because Holy Apostles offered an online master's degree in theology, I was able, as a mom with 5 little kids at home and a teenager under my care, I was able to take classes online, and there was no way in the world I could have studied theology if it meant going to a building every day. So it made possible something that would have been otherwise impossible. So online education, of course, after the pandemic, that a lot changed there. That was a paradigm shift in how we think about online education. Holy Apostles was doing online education before online education was cool. So I've always seen Holy Apostles as a leader in how to do online education correctly, do it right, do it in the most influential way. But those are big questions. But the other big question in secondary education right now is this question of interdisciplinary approaches. What does that mean? So I'm saying this so you're thinking. I'm trying to inspire thought in you and some questions in you to come at the end. But think about it. Like I already said, there's so much scientific information. If I collect physics textbooks as a hobby. I find it interesting to see how they change over time. And I've followed one publisher from the 1960s all the way up to the modern college physics textbook that's used now. And you can see what changes. Quantum mechanics was only being introduced in the 1960s, and it occupies a significant portion of the textbook now. So what's included in a single science course now is a lot more than was included in the past. There's no room for philosophy or theology or other things like that. And as we all know, with the rise of modern science, philosophy was sort of seen as unnecessary, which, that breaks our hearts, right? It shouldn't have been that way. It was seen as unnecessary in a lot of secular institutions and especially theology too. And so those just kind of got pushed to the wayside and weren't incorporated into a consideration of science. And I'm a child of that thought because I got my PhD in chemistry when I was not religious. And so I ended up with a very materialistic, mechanical mindset on reality. And when you live that way, which I think a lot of people do, which is another reason I'm so passionate about this, when you see your fellow human being as just a collection of atoms and compounds, a highly complex composite system, nevertheless, but still just atoms and molecules, compounds. When you see your fellow human being that way, and you're not thinking about soul, angels, God, anything spiritual, you force yourself into this worldview where the fellow human is not something you can have a relationship with. It's just a bunch of atoms colliding into your life, and so be it. There's no basis for morality. There's no basis for understanding human dignity. There's no basis for understanding relationships. I think that has wreaked havoc on our societies. And this is one reason for interdisciplinary approaches, is to bring back a responsible and mature integration of philosophical concepts and theological concepts with science. If you're at Holy Apostles, you're going to get that in your first year now. You're going to be taught our best effort at what that looks like so that it will guide the rest of your thinking when it comes to being a good steward and an apostle and a disciple and an evangelist. Sorry, not an apostle. But that's the big question, how you do it. So then how do you do it in 15 weeks? I'll show you the outline of the syllabus we came up with in a minute. And now the science part a little bit. I wrote a paper, and I'm just referring to this because it was a chance for me to put my thoughts together here. Humans and harmony in nature on a Belizean farm. Why a Belizean farm? My husband wanted to go there as a dream all his life, and when he retired, we went there last February, and we loved it so much we took our kids back. That's our youngest son right there, Jose. He's 14. We took two of our youngest two kids back in the summer, and I was writing a paper on humans and harmony in nature at the time, and I got to see this experience up close and see it through the eyes of my children, but also thinking as a chemist. This is a sustainable farm in Belize, and it's a little ecosystem unto itself. It's 1,000-acre farm, and it is completely sustainable unto itself. That means they provide their own electricity. They have a man-made pond at the top of it. It's on a mountain. They have a man-made pond at the very top of the mountain, and they have another one down a ways. And they have pipes going from both of those to a generator, which is it's a little tiny windmill. The windmill's only about this big, and that goes on to the powerhouse. So what they do is they collect rainfall in that higher pool, and it's going to flow with a faster rate than the lower pool. They switch it off, so they have switches to switch the pipes that flow to the windmill and the turbine, and it turns the turbine, and that turns it in the electromagnetic field, which creates the electricity, which then goes to the powerhouse. And they have apps. The manager has an app on his phone where he controls how the water's flowing, where the electricity is going, and how much electricity they have stored up in the battery. So the whole thing operates. They have their own power lines then. It's a resort, a restaurant, and a working farm. They supply their energy that way, and they always have enough because they can plan with the 2 lakes they've dug. But they also grow their own food. They have gardens, livestock, fish, and they grow most of their own food. And of course, they get their internet service externally. But they're they're pretty self-sustainable. They have teak forest and they sell the teak wood, but they also use it to build all the buildings and the furniture that's on this place. So it's very beautiful. Um, but I was looking at it that day, and this is the science part. So not only were we learning about agriculture and nature and how humans have in this little ecosystem fit into the harmony. So what's really beautiful at this place, it's called Maya Heights. It's in near Hopkins, Belize. What's really beautiful about this place is you can see the harmonies in nature. And by harmonies, I'm not a very poetic person because I'm a chemist, but I try to be a little bit poetic here. What you can see in the harmony is like, I have played a violin in an orchestra, so I'm a little bit musical there. Each person in the orchestra has his or her part to play. But whoever wrote the music was looking at the big picture and wrote down all the parts for all the instrumentalists to play. And when you play, there's harmony, but there's not harmony if someone plays to her own tune or if someone doesn't practice and can't play her part. There's not harmony if you're playing in a different key. The harmony implies that there is a balance and a working and an integration and interconnectedness between all the parts, and it makes this beautiful music. I got the impression thinking about this farm that they did the same thing there. The harmony that was already in creation between nature, agriculture, the plants that are growing, they worked into that harmony. What they did wasn't damaging the environment. It was using the environment. Their teak trees that they grow, they collect the seeds. They have the mother teak tree, which they get all the seeds from to grow all the other trees. So as they have little patches growing all over the farm at different ages because they need to let the wood mature, but they're always replenishing the trees that they cut down. They're putting they have coconuts everywhere, and they use every part of the coconut, even the husk they use to fire the ovens that dry the fruit that they grow in their gardens, and they sell dried fruit externally too as a source of income. But it all fits into this harmony. So when you're there as a person with your rational soul and your eyeballs looking out at all of this, there was one night, it's up on a hill and you can see the Caribbean Sea off in the distance. There was one night when I was writing this paper and I was standing on that hill looking out, and as a chemist, I know that the elements, all those things on the periodic table that you have to memorize, they're actually amazing. All the elements are made in the stars that I'm standing on this hill looking at. The elements are made in the stars. Some elements have come to the earth over time, over the billions of years that the earth has been here. Those elements have been incorporated into substances, that philosophy speaking here, have been incorporated into this hierarchy of substances. And plants, animals, over the eons of evolution, somehow photosynthesis evolved to occur, which is what generated over the eons, over many, many years, all the oxygen on Earth that we breathe. And so, our bodies are made up of these elements. The living things are made up of these elements. There's plants, there's animals, there's a hierarchy of animals. But Aquinas says at the top of this hierarchy is the substance of the human being. It's all for us. And so I'm telling my children, when you're looking at those stars, that's where the elements are first created, and they have form and they have matter, and they the ones that are here on the earth came to this earth and formed our planet, and they're being recycled through all these living things, including your own body. And it's an amazing concept to think that the atoms that make up your own body, all of the atoms of the various elements that make up your body, who knows where they've been in the universe. When you take a breath right now, when you just breathe in, you're breathing in gas molecules, nitrogen, oxygen, whatever other junk is in there. I hope not too much. You're breathing in molecules made of elements that God alone knows where all they've been in the universe. You very well could be breathing in an atom of an element that touched Christ at some point or that touched that touched some, you don't know where it's been. That kind of grossed out my kids a little bit too when they were thinking about we don't know where all the atoms have been that we're breathing in right now. But even when you eat and the food becomes part of your body and you lose atoms of your body in daily life, some of them you keep your whole life, some of them you don't. We're always becoming, but we're part of the becoming. I mean, part of our becoming is being interconnected with the rest of our planet, which is interconnected with the rest of the solar system and the universe. So a person told me one time on Twitter, it was Jen Fulweiler. She's a friend of mine. She said, I met someone on Twitter that she introduced me to. She says, I'm really glad that you two connected. And I'm like, oh no, we're all connected at the atomic level in very precise and vast ways because we're all made of the elements that come from the stars that we look at. She's like, that's not what I meant, but fine. But it is an amazing way to look at the world. And there are things that you can teach people about chemistry, about physics, about biology, about agriculture, about farming that you don't need to be an expert to appreciate some of these things. It's, in my opinion, it's crucial in our day and age to have some scientific literacy as a citizen and as an evangelist. So there is my science part there. I want to keep an eye on the time. So this is the 15 lessons of the course that we put together. We're using a book by Christopher Thompson from 2017 called The Joyful Mystery: Field Notes Toward a Green Thomism. It's an interesting book. His basic premise in the book is we don't get outside enough. And I think that fits well with the online education question and the artificial intelligence question. Part of education ought to be encouraging students and ourselves as professors to get outside more. I mean, that's such a simple thing, but if you look at, on social media, fad diets and recommendations for well-being and mental health, a lot of them say get outside more. If we're inside all the time, if we're into the computer all the time, we don't have a chance to learn about creation. And, I personally make it have a habit of walking outside daily. And I encourage other people to do it too. It's just good to get out and see. And when maybe go read the photosynthesis chapter in a biochemistry textbook before you take your walk. And your mind will be blown at all the things that go on just in the leaves that you see around you. The green that we see is coming from chlorophyll molecules who absorb the energy from the sun, but the light that is being reflected to our eyes is green light. And we can see that green light because a certain wavelength of light hits our eyeballs and is recognized by the rods and cones and processed by our brain. But the reason that the chlorophyll molecule is even absorbing the photons of light from the sun is because they go into this elaborate system, this nanomachine system of photosynthesis that generates the energy to make the 3-carbon precursor for all biomass. So what that means is photosynthesis makes all the bodies of all the living things on the planet Earth. Photosynthesis uses 6 times more energy per year than the human race, than all the humans put together. Photosynthesis uses 6 times more energy, but it gets that energy from the sun and it turns it into living things. So it's a pretty neat system that God has created. And I know that stuff because my PhD research in chemistry a long time ago was I was not religious. I did not think about God. Yet I was trying to simulate this elaborate natural process in the lab for the sake artificial photosynthesis. That's what we called it, artificial photosynthesis, as an alternative energy source for the sake of not relying on fossil fuels so much. And we couldn't do it. That was one of I talk about it in my book, Particles of Faith. That was one of my moments of grace when I had to acknowledge, per Romans 1:20, that there probably is a God out there. And I just wasn't ready to say so, to admit it, to accept it. I later, of course, did. But It's amazing what happens. So we're going to share some of this with the students. Begin with wonder, because that's how we begin in philosophy. That's how we begin when we look. There's been a lot of awe and wonder lost in the sciences today. The way it's taught doesn't inspire a lot of awe and wonder in students. We're moving on to our study in our place in creation, and then our study of creation. Who are we and why are we here? And what are we doing? What does it mean to be human? And then what does it mean to reach out into creation and study it? What's a responsible way to study it? Going to talk about the evolutionary debate. We're going to talk about our common home, then bring it down, our local community. Then we are asking students to do a video project. If you're a student who's ever been in one of my classes, you know I'm big on video projects. You need to speak what you're learning. You need to learn how to reflect and speak and tie it to your real life. Then we move on to knowledge, how we gain knowledge of the natural world. Then light. We're going to talk about light in two senses: light as photons of energy, but also light as illumination in our thought. And that comes from St. Augustine. And then talk about darkening the light, pollution, climate, human ecology. What are the issues there? Just as an awareness building, so students know what the issues are, and then can be inspired to go out into the world and offer where they can their own solutions, even if it's how you make decisions about what you eat or what you buy as a consumer. And then talk about ecological education and spirituality, and end with creation's fulfillment in Christ. Pope Benedict XVI wrote beautifully about that. And then, of course, what would a course be without a term paper? We have the term paper. So that's the course we're doing. Those are the big questions we're asking. And now I do want to stop here. We've got about 23 minutes left, and turn it over to questions. If you have a question, you can raise your hand. I'm going to stop sharing. You can raise your hand virtually. It puts up a little hand. And Dr. Smith is going to help me keep an eye on that. Or use the chat box to ask your question if you're more comfortable doing it that way. Or if you have a question later, email one of us. There's my email address, and you can find the others on the website, tsmith or rramage, RAMAGE, at holyapostles.edu. Okay, let me stop sharing now. Okay.
Stacy, Dr. Trasancos, I've got an opening question. When you were describing the development of physics textbooks and how much more is being crammed into textbooks, it seems like we're actually, somebody might think we're actually complicating it by making, with this interdisciplinary approach, we're making it even more complex. So can you talk a little bit about how the role of the institution, or maybe the importance of the educational institution as being a concierge of information, has changed over the past few decades?
That's a really good question, because the way it works right now is the physics teacher pretty much takes there's national standards even at the college level. The physics teacher takes the textbook and just teaches what's in the textbook. So who guards what goes in there? The consensus of what goes in there is usually a team of physicists or chemists who decide, and the publisher decides. What we're doing is we've got to take from that. That's where an expertise comes in. I hope I'm answering your question, and you can chime in too. What the chemist or the science teacher has to do is say, okay, from these textbooks, biology, chemistry, and physics, what is the most important thing for a class like this? What do I glean out of that as the most important concept? And then the philosopher has to do the same thing. And then the theologian has to do the same thing. And we actually talked about how to slice up the course. Do you just want to have science for 5 weeks, philosophy and we decided, no, we're not going to do that, because that's just compartmentalizing again, making mini courses. So we sliced it horizontally, so to speak. All three are included in every lesson. But you do have to know what the goal is there. And can you say more about, I can say that for science, like with science, just like I was explaining to you, I've spent many years trying to think of interesting ways to teach the complex concepts that will inspire awe and wonder in the students who aren't going to become scientists. And so I've devoted myself to that question for a long time, and I love that kind of thing. What about you, Dr. Smith, with philosophy, and anybody else with theology?
Well, yeah, part of the problem is with teaching philosophy, we fall into this trap of teaching the history of philosophy, and if you just teach the history of the philosophy, the last comes off as the best all the time. Everything looks like it's working toward the very last thing, as opposed to working away from, or maybe a history of errors. So I remember there was a story of Albert Einstein when he was given his papers at Princeton, and one of his assistants criticized him. He says, "You can't give the same exam questions you gave last year because students will know them." He says, "Well, the questions remain the same, but the answers have changed." Um, but for philosophy and theology, maybe the questions are changing how we're thinking about things, but the answers have not necessarily changed. The truth, who has caused all things? God. But how do we know that? Well, we know it in many, many different, more complex ways, right? So the development of the sciences perhaps has changed a little bit, but I think that we face the same problem of the overwhelming abundance of information in any field, and how to package that and manage that. So we're not forcing students to drink from a fire hose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyone else? Chris.
Hi, good morning. Um, I I worked in medicine for 30 years, and the and I have a great love of nature, and I just feel like um science explains how God did it. And but then also the need in um all fields of study, how different fields um, interrelate to each other. Um, because everything affects something else. And if you can see the whole picture and how it interrelates with each other, then you have a whole component, if that makes any sense. Are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
listening.
So, but I've really enjoyed your lecture, and thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And we have Father Uke. Are you here? I'm looking for you on the screen. A comment. I think this is significant. I was a little disappointed in the translation of Laudato Si, in that some of the terms used terms that politicians use. Yes, I know. I was hoping to have a unique but understandable language. This was supposed to be Dr. Ramaj today for this lecture, but he had a conflict and he wasn't able to give his lecture, but he is scheduled for next time. So he is the one. He's the theological expert who he focuses on integral ecology. He's done a lot of writing at Catholic World Report, if you want to look up some of his work there. And he has a book out on the text of Pope Benedict XVI. Yes. So let's see. Oh, okay. Suggesting to, if y'all can look at, if you can see the chat box, I think everybody can see that. Read it in Spanish. You can understand more about what he's saying. It's a translation thing. Any comments on that? Any other ideas, thoughts, questions? Yes, Stephen?
Hi, Steve Talizzi. I'm an alum from, oh my, 10 years now, 2016. I was just a little surprised about the emphasis on climate change. And, when I look at the intersection of faith and teaching new people to the faith and their teens and stuff, issues along biology, like gender dysphoria, uh, when does life begin? They struggle with abortion, euthanasia. Um, these are the science questions, when you start to get into the proof of God on creation and Big Bang and those types of things, some of the stuff that's touched on by the Magis Institute. That's the kinds of stuff that I get questions on. And this course being a mandatory course, the way it's structured now to me feels more like a elective course. It doesn't address the main thing that you're going to face as a theologian when facing rationalists in the marketplace. When they look at everything from it has to be proved in the scientific method kind of discussions.
Yeah, I think getting into those are important bioethical issues, the end of life, beginning of life, end of life, and then even the identity stuff in the middle. Those are big issues. They're beyond the scope of a course called Our Physical World. The course is specifically focused on the grant in the first place was on climate science and in theological education, CSTE. That was the grant that allowed us to do the course. But the only reason we applied for the grant in the first place is because we wanted to develop a course called Our Physical World. And this seemed to dovetail nicely with that. The focus of a course called Our Physical World is is the question of stewardship, is to look at the question of stewardship. So that's the tie-in with philosophy and theology. We don't have time. We can't in a course like that get into those other questions, but hopefully we're laying the groundwork for how to think about those questions because the students are going to go on. They have to take a math course. They have to take another hard science course, but they also have to go through this core. All of them, regardless of their major, have to go through this core of philosophy and theology courses that do get into all of those questions, ethics courses, morality courses. So we're hoping to lay a groundwork that they can build on with those questions.
Another topic, Dr. Trasancos, you talked about stewardship and dominion, and there's a big controversy about how we're supposed to understand dominion in terms of, well, how much do we need to care for and how much can we just use and exploit? So can you talk a little bit about the difference between stewardship versus ownership of creation?
Yeah, that I can talk a little bit about it, but I invite others to chime in here because it's not a real settled question, even in my own mind. But, thinking about the land we're on, we own this where I'm sitting in my home office. We own this little quarter-acre lot where our house sits. But what do we truly own? That's one of the questions that the students are going to be thinking about. What does it mean to own the land? What are your responsibilities to the land that you're on? And there's a lot of talk these days about where the land came from, who owned the land before us, and acknowledgement of that. I'm friends with he used to be our pastor at our parish, but he's now in Washington, D.C., working for the USCCB for Indigenous people here in the United States as a defender of Native Indians, because there's problems among those cultures that I didn't even know about, because they don't have land. They don't have much that they own. They don't have much among their people where they are in the United States. They don't have much hopes and dreams for their future. And there's a very high suicide rate among those people. And the USCCB, I didn't know this either. They actually have a whole department that evangelizes mission territory for those people. They send priests to live among those people and understand their issues. Do you want to say more about that question, though, Dr. Smith, or anybody else?
Well, one of the things Pope Francis was pointing out is what he refers to as our ecological debt. That one, where he connects social justice and ecological justice. so that when the poor or Native American groups are marginalized ecologically, then they're also marginalized in other ways. And one of the things that Pope Francis is drawing out is the fact that the air and the water and the resources of the earth are a common good, not a private good. That everyone essentially has a right to clean air, decent air, and clean and drinkable water as well. So that when people are marginalized in terms of being forced to live in housing that doesn't even have access to clean air because you live too close to an industrial plant, well, that means you're faced with all kinds of disadvantages, with not just with regards to driving distance to a good school, but the quality of life, and with regards to breathing, and the quality of life with regards to thinking and health, and it impacts everything. And I think that's what he's trying to do, is try to enlarge our vision of not just thinking about ourselves and our family and our community, but in with regards to how everything we do affects everything else on the planet, right? And that we are truly all interconnected. How many of those who are present here have seen the movie The Letter, which is a short film written about about this work? Has anybody seen that movie? Okay. I would urge all of you to look. It's available on YouTube. Just look up The Letter, Laudato Si. It's a marvelous presentation, but it underscores what Pope Francis's intention is, to address this letter to all people of the planet, not just people of goodwill, Catholics, Christians, but absolutely everybody, because it is our common home. And he's trying to find common ground with regards to all of humanity, to draw everyone in, and so that Catholics have a voice in that crowd. But in other words, we're not just talking amongst ourselves, but everyone who is sharing in this common home. So it's a marvelous portrait if you have the time to watch it.
The Letter.
Yeah. How many of you have actually read Laudato Si? Okay, most of you. Good. That's excellent. Yeah.
We have a comment over here about, and if anybody knows of any organizations, speak up. For Catholics who are called to the biological sciences, are there any? Oh, thanks. There's the letter film too. I'm looking at the chat box. For those that are called to the biological sciences, like volunteering at zoos, being involved in ecological organizations, are there any organizations that are more Christ-centered? Any Catholic organizations for those called to the biological sciences? I know some of the professors in Steubenville's biology department. My impression of them is they're very balanced, very strong in the science, but also very solid in the Catholic faith. And the Society of Catholic Scientists is a good society. It's scientists from all branches, but they have a lot of good information. Anybody know of any other things like that? And of course, if you're looking for an organization that you'd like to belong to and there isn't one, that sometimes is the call that you're called to start one.
Do it yourself.
Think big.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And these will be recorded and posted. Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, Iqbal.
Yes, good evening, Dr. Smith.
Good
It's
evening.
good to see you again. Great lecture. I just wanted to catch, and I just wanted to be clear. This is for undergraduate courses at, I don't like the word Holy Apostles. I don't want to use the word hacks. So that was it's for undergraduate lecture courses. Am I correct?
Yes, there's two courses. The main course is Our Physical World, which is an undergraduate course for the first year students. But there's also a graduate course that's being developed too. It is developed. It will be offered in the summer. It's called Climate Science and Catholic Thought. So it's a graduate level look into the magisterial documents.
Okay.
Dr. Trasancos, you're a member of the Society of Catholic Scientists. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Stephen Barr began it. I knew Professor Barr back when he just had the idea to do this. I was doing some work with him and a group of other people from Notre Dame that were they were doing this project to teach Catholic high school science and theology educators how to integrate. It was an effort to teach them how to integrate their disciplines at the high school level. And I met him there when he was talking about this society he wanted to do in his retirement. So he retired as a professor, a theoretical physicist, and he's the author of Ancient Faith, Modern Physics. I think that's the name of his book. And he literally, I watched him start this from the ground up. The Society of Catholic Scientists has a website, and they have grown. I think there's several thousand members now all over the world. They have chapters in different nations. But he envisioned it as a group of scientists. So what he was seeing out there is that there are a lot, contrary to what you hear in popular media, a lot of scientists are people of faith, and a lot of them are Catholics. There's a lot of scientists who are devout Catholics who aren't connected with each other. And so he had a society to bring these together, these scientists together. So at first you could only join if you were a working scientist. They've since opened it up to scholars. So other people who are interested, maybe you're a philosopher or a theologian, you can also join. Yeah, thank you for the links. You can join this society too. And anybody can go to their website. They have a podcast. They put out excellent articles and publications, and they have a conference once a year. It's part of this bigger effort to dispel this tired old myth that faith and science are in conflict. It is, I say it's tired and old because it's just so worn out. A lot of work has gone on like this to bring the science and faith back together, philosophy and theology. And I think that we have AAAS, a secular science organization, funding education at seminaries is a testament to how far we've come to dispel that myth. Even scientists are saying that myth is damaging because they recognize the value in asking ethical questions like we're asking here. And I've always thought it's a good idea to get involved in that as Catholics, because I think the Catholic Church has the capital T truth. I know that, and that's why I'm Catholic. And we have a lot to say about proper guidance ethically and morally on these questions. We understand. If you ask a Catholic, what does it mean to be human? We know. We have that. And what's our place in creation? We have that. So we have a good foundation to make moral decisions off of.
Another question. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Iqbal.
A very interesting question, and I know you're looking at only the environment and social the impact, which is very good. You're right. There's so much they can come together: science, philosophy, and theology. I wonder, and you've touched upon it in the presentation. It'd be interesting to see how the course develops. The level of depth one will require in each of this to make a suitable use of them in a holistic manner, an approach to a solution or to addressing a problem. As with a theologian, what are your initial takes? And I'm sure you mentioned this in the presentation. I just wanted to sort of ask how, if someone comes from a non-theological, non-scientific background, how much depth do you think they need in the sciences to be able to appreciate, ask the right questions? That's the word I was looking for, to be able to ask the right questions and appreciate the difficulties and subtleties, and also vice versa. Because as you rightly said, as you rightly know, these things are means and these things are instruments for us to a higher end, as St. Thomas says in I think in Article 5 of Question 1 of Summa. So, what do you think of the depth that one will have to accumulate in bringing such diversity together? And I agree with you. The discrete nature of knowledge is very harmful to us. But I think it's a very interesting course, and I just want to see how you think about that, the depth of knowledge required to be able to make it useful and beneficial.
Dr. Smith, chime in too. I the way I what I've learned, let me think how to say this without backing up all the way to when I was born. But what I think about when so like when I would meet students who had taken my classes and I would ask them questions about what they learned and they didn't remember, at first I was very upset. Like I failed as an educator. They didn't remember this thing that I taught them. So I learned to stop doing that. And I asked them, what do you remember from the course? What do you remember? So the way I approach it now, I want students to take something away from the course. I want there to be something they remember. But with this course, it's even more than that. It's more than remembering, oh, I liked balancing equations in chemistry. Oh, I liked understanding how elements are made in the stars. Oh, I liked how the periodic table is structured. That was really cool. This course is an opportunity to inspire them to take away something bigger. And it's something Dr. Smith had even mentioned to me a while back about how students need to go beyond just absorbing the material. They need to process the material. They need to learn how to critique it. They need to learn how to answer critiques. They need to go forward with it and be able to talk about it. And there was a question, are we teaching them to do this? And this is the kind of course that I would hope what the students take away from the course is how to think better, popping with ideas. They know where to go look up something if they need to find an answer. They know how to structure their thinking. And by that, I mean, don't form your opinion flippantly. If you're going to form an opinion on something important, which everything you're forming an opinion about should be important, do your homework first. You got to read what's already been said. You got to strive to understand, like St. Thomas does, strive to understand the objections and the arguments that are already there, and then add your contribution. Push forward into new knowledge a little bit. And that's what it takes to get a PhD. You have to contribute new knowledge to whatever your field is. But I hope this kind of course teaches them to think that way about their education. Let me take this in, and then let me turn around and push forward into knowledge and see what I can contribute. So I hope this is a course that teaches them how to think. Dr. Smith, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, there's a temptation, and Pope Francis mentioned this. There's a temptation to wait for certainty and fullness of wisdom before we take action. Almost like the Platonic view of the just man. He has to be totally harmonized and perfected inside before he even steps out into the real world. And we tend to have that knee-jerk. Actually, we're taught that by people who don't want us to take action, saying, well, you need to know everything before you do anything. But one of the things I learned in the Dozier seminar last year is that action can be very, very small, and then it can snowball. Something as simple as this Power and Light group, Faith and Light group that I heard a talk from. They said something as simple as, well, let's say the grounds of your church has a huge grassy area, and you've got this old rickety mower that pollutes a lot, makes a lot of noise. Well, how about raising money to get a updated or even electric powered motor or something that doesn't pollute as much? And all of a sudden you're teaching people to care for the environment. You pollute less, and you're providing a good income for the person who's having to mow the lawn or provide solar panels for the church so it doesn't use as much electricity. Little projects like that. So I'm hoping that in the middle of this course, people can just start coming up with ideas. Oh, I've noticed there's this issue, and it could be as simple as recycling in your home. It could be as simple as sorting out things a little bit better in your home, or encouraging people at work to recycle, or to maybe commute with another person so you're polluting less. Or there's so many ways in which you can just look out for other people, and all of a sudden you're starting to take responsibility for the community, and all of a sudden you're taking responsibility for those around you in surprising ways, and just looking out for one another. The neighbor has a broken leg, and you might not have thought about it before. Well, maybe I can offer to give that person a ride rather than waiting for them to take an Uber. So in other words, just starting to be having your point of view of responsibility enlarged, so that when we start to see things, judge the right action and then come up with an action. Because at the end of the day, an Aristotelian syllogism doesn't end with an idea about what is good, but an action which is good, right? So if you see something that is the appropriate action to be done, the conclusion is actually to go out and do it. And like Stacy says, it may start with something small, it may start with something big, or if there's no society doing that, well, you can found the society. But I hope that answers your question, Iqbal, because we're obviously not going to provide all the wealth of knowledge for everybody to make the perfectly wise decision, but the impetus to get involved and maybe get some additional knowledge and understanding so you can actually take some small baby steps with regards to
No,
any particular issue.
that's what I was hoping you both, Dr. Tracy and yourself, Dr. Smith, answered. Very adequate.
Yeah, very good.
Comprehensive.
Marielle, I think you had a question.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Dr. Trasancos and everyone here. One thing that I know Holy Apostles is very dedicated and devout in sharing the faith the way it's supposed to be, and I really appreciate that. Though one of the questions that I have is that this course having to do with like this concept and idea of environmentalism, but the true way, would you or do you guys think as like a staff and as teachers there that it will be properly guiding and actually I don't want to say influence, but really teach the idea of the transcending concept of taking care of the environment? And as you said, I thought it was very important the way you said the physical, like because we live in a physical realm and the spiritual realm. Would you say that this is going to be a course that will actually make the students like actually apply? I don't know if that makes sense, but truly apply it into their way of living, and almost kind of like the snowball effect, where it's going to actually be teaching just not themselves but others into seeing beyond taking care of a plant. It's like seeing it through the eyes of a Catholic. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense to me. Yeah, the goal is for students to come away from this class having their life changed. I mean, I've been a student a lot of my life. I like being a student. I like it when someone competent in I've taken Dr. Smith's classes, someone who's an expert in their field tells me what to read and analyzes what I write and gives me feedback. I find that very useful. I go out from a class and it has changed me. I've acquired knowledge and it's changed the way I think about my place in the world. And so to that part, Marielle, absolutely, we hope that it not only lays a foundation for the students' continued education in theology and philosophy and the humanities and history and English and the sciences and math, but also that it's something that will go on with them even after they graduate. And that does, it forced us to ask other questions about education, because now we're not just asking questions about what goes in the syllabus. What are we going to say in our video lecture? What are we going to put on the assessments? It changes the way we're trying to assess. I'm a science teacher. I like to be able to teach. This is what you need to learn to do. This is the correct answer, and you do it, and I grade it, and you get a 100, and everything's great. I like that. It's clear cut. It's left brained. That's what I like. But we're not doing that in this course. The right answers are going to be what the students will be inspired to come up with beyond it. And I'll say real quick, I teach a course like this at Seton Hall, and it's in the Catholic Studies program, and it is a core course. It's among several courses students can take, but a lot of STEM students take the course, and it's called Science in the Church. And we do look at the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, and that's a great website to go to. The Pontifical Academy of Sciences, their publications on various issues like AI and robotics and organ donation and some of these other issues that Stephen was talking about, they look at that and then the students are asked to comment on it. And I remember one student was very upset. She worked at a Starbucks and she was just talking back to what Dr. Smith said about small things. She was very upset that at Starbucks where she worked, they threw the food out every day because the cupcakes and the cookies and the sandwiches, if they had given them to the poor and somebody knew it came from Starbucks, it would damage their brand. It wouldn't be top quality food. So rather than damage their brand, risk damaging their bread, they didn't give the food to people who needed it. They threw it away and wasted it. So this one student was inspired to stand up to that and speak up about it and say, this doesn't make any sense. It's that kind of thing, that we're hoping to inspire.
Thank you. Yeah. Just maybe I should have elaborated. Also, I meant influence in the way where people won't be necessarily looking at it in a political way or in the worldly way, in the worldly sense, if that makes sense. Because I know in our generation, sometimes we take more care about a plant than a baby, like inside a womb. And I don't know, like our generation is just so influenced by that idea. And well, always in prayer and hoping that with this course, people will come to understand the concept of what truly defending the earth is, and not looking at it in the way that in the contemporary way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm looking up a quote. There's and that gets at what it means to be human. I'm just going to read it. There's a quote in the Summa Contra Gentiles part or book 322. Therefore, the last end of all generation is the human soul, and to this does matter tend as its ultimate form. Consequently, the elements are for the sake of the mixed body, and the mixed body composites for the sake of living things. Of these, plants are for the sake of animals, and animals for the sake of man. Therefore, man is the end of all generation. And let me find. I like that quote. I remember the first time I read that quote, it kind of floored me because you're right, Marielle, you don't hear that said, but it's all for us, but that brings with it responsibilities, not just to the earth, but to each other. We have responsibilities to each other. We have a friend of mine, Leah Labresco, just wrote a book, The Dignity of Dependence, where she's talking about how our dignity is found in depending on each other. So those ideas are right, and those are the ones we hope to inspire.
Thank you.
Pope Benedict XVI had in that book of his homilies in the beginning, he has an appendix at the back, and it's an essay called Faith in Creation. And he's writing about how people in this technological age seem to have lost faith in creation or even the word creation itself. They don't see nature as creation. But he says we actually do have faith in creation, even if we think we don't. Everybody at some point cares about what their place in the world and what their contributions are. We wouldn't even, he says, be talking about climate science if we didn't have faith in creation. We wouldn't even be trying to innovate new technologies if we didn't have faith in creation. So he's kind of calling us back to faith in creation, but also pointing out that it's there even if we don't for people that don't realize it. Anything else? We're a lot over time. But if there's anything else anybody wants to say. Okay. Go ahead, Stephen.
Just curious on what the topic of next month's presentation will be.
Dr. Matthew Ramage is coming to give his talk. He's a theologian, and he's talking. He will be the theology piece of it. I focus on science. He's the theologian, and he will be knowing him. He's going to be he's talking about integral ecology, but he's also talking about how he's added that into his courses. Somebody's. They will be sending out information about his talk too. And then Dr. Smith goes and
Okay. Very good.
okay. Oops. Anybody else? I think Father Robert was talking. I muted. There you go.
That's okay.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Trasanko. This is a great start to our series.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here, and have a beautiful weekend. God bless.
God bless everyone.
We'll post the recording. Bye-bye.